answer the call, step up. I'm trying to see what I can do now to try and help the community here. I spent the last 5 years stopping deforestation and exploitation in Asia. So I've got quite a few ideas on some of the things we're dealing with here at the moment. But I'm fully off-grid, not renewable energy, high food and water, and I'm quite happy. I've had 25 years involved in climate change, like IPCC, etc. If anyone would like me to talk to their group, their school, or just individually, I'm happy to do so.
How can we convince others? That's a really good question, and I think, as I said, we never try and tell people what to do. We just tell people what we do. Within the Q for industry, we get very frustrated because whenever facts and figures are put out, they always put average. So when you see the average organic returns, because let's face it, this is what drives most people in the Q for industry. Average organic returns versus average conventional returns, we're always below. Not by much, and we're fighting to get that up, but we're always below. But what we say is we don't need to be average. You know, there's a vast array of people within organics and within the conventional, but the conventional people have got more tools in their toolbox. So there's less laggards, if you like. But how can we convince people to do it? You people need to convince them to do it. The neighbours of the kiwi fruit orchardists who get affected by the sprays, you know, through the supermarket buying your products. Not that we get very much first-class kiwi fruit in New Zealand to buy, but doing so you're supporting the organic industry. Social licence is huge in the kiwi fruit industry. You know, we need the community need us for employment, but we need the community to be on site. We can't do our business without the community. So I think pressure from the community for people, I always hear, and you see all over Facebook, you know, people livelihoods impacted by kiwi fruit, often the sprays, all those big hideous covers that they put over it. You know, what's the actual cost, the environmental cost of producing that netting? So the answer, we'll keep telling people what we do and explaining that we are sustainably financially, because that's what a lot of people are worried about. But I think we all have a part to play.
So that's where my question comes in. So my question is to the candidates. Do you support Māori commissioning for the proposed Māori Health Authority? This is a TCDT compliant proposal that's before the government right now, and it holds a hauora view of health. And a hauora view of health means that health is inseparable from the environment, education, income, and civic activity. So the majority of health expert panelists recommended Māori commissioning in June this year for a health review report, but that's been vetoed by Heather Simpson. So we in this room can campaign, and there's some flyers out on the desk there about the campaign we're starting here in Ōpōtiki, say political, to reject Simpson's veto and adopt a world-leading TCDT-based, socially just hauora system that incorporates environment and health, which will benefit everybody in this room, regardless of tangata whenua or non-tangata whenua. So the question is to the candidates, do you support Māori commissioning for the proposed Māori Health Authority? Nami.
This is wrong. Kia ora, thank you for the question. I'm on the Whakawhiti Health. I walk into that space when it was first changed from District Health to Hauora, and I walk into the A&E and a lady says, "Welcome to Hauora." And I was thinking, what is that? So we're still working on just the name, Hauora. What does it mean? And that's one of the distinctives between Māori and non-Māori, is what does that mean? Within our nation, we still have dialogue and debate about specialised treatment being treated special. What's good for Māori is good for non-Māori. It's that simple. I've been working in sexual health in my region for 25 years with young people. All they want to do is have a discussion. Because there's three things we just don't talk well about. Health, sexual health particularly, politics and money. You know, we don't talk so well in these spaces, which we need to. So one of the ways, I remember this question I posed to Dr. Oh gosh, he's written some really good books. Māori man, his name's Mason Drury. Sorry, Professor Mason Drury. I said to him about engaging Māori in respect to health. What does that really look like in an engagement space? So he posed the question to me in a different way. He said, if you had a lot of your clients who came to your PHO or your health space who were Asian, what's the first thing you would do? What do you reckon you'd do? A whole bunch of people from another culture come to you. Yeah, you get to know their culture. So if we had a whole lot of Hungarian show up, well, I'd probably be Googling how to say hello first, you know, and just the basic principles of an engagement so that they felt welcome. And a lot of the systems that have been in play in our nation have been very monocultural. They've been just an expectance that you rock up and you take off your top and you get a test. That's what happened to me for my first mammogram. I don't generally get half naked for anyone, including my husband, no. I just find it just those kind of spaces that we have an expectation, even for some non-Māori. But in engaging Māori in health space, we know that health is about how it makes you feel. How do I feel right now? I'm scared. I just had a polyp removed from my vocal cords 2 weeks ago. I wasn't supposed to speak for 2 weeks straight. It's kind of funny because I'm a chatterbox, so everybody knew this was going to be a challenge. But I spent 7 days not talking, writing on a whiteboard. To my family who loved it. Charades was great. But the framework of how I felt in that moment going into that space, the doctor was fabulous in Waikato. It was a really wonderful space. He rings me and he says, you haven't got cancer. And so immediately I'm thinking, I wasn't even thinking about that. I just thought you'd give me this thing. But that's the framework of health. Big, bad news, you know, kind of in the midst of it. So for a lot of our Māori whānau, we've been in the system, engaging it to some degree, getting that letter from the specialist to say, it changes your world, you know? Have you got the support? Have you had the access to that support? All those things. So to veto this, for me, respect the report and the review on our health system, but understand that there's still a huge inequality that exists for Māori when it comes to health. We need people from the grassroots spaces and corners of this planet to be at the tables of governance to tell people what it feels like as Māori in a health system. I took a group of residents on a journey because I wanted to be a good role model for heart and diabetes, and I took one of my friends from the community who asked me what a paradigm was. Oh, a paradigm. She's a big lady, and I took her to a meeting to talk to the doctor who was talking about how we can make better health outcomes for Māori with diabetes and heart. And he put up a barcode, you know, a graph that was out the sides. She turns to me and she goes, see that graph? It looks like the Taj Mahal to me. And I was thinking, you know, yes, they look like a beehive to me. And she goes, see, now I'm thinking of butter chicken. So even the health metric he was using made her hungry. And she was overweight, and you know, so it's like, tell the people how it feels when you're in this office. When you walk into a space and you've got a very slim park you automatically feel bad. You're trying to suck everything in. I'm a failure in the system. So it's really important that people understand that it's just how we feel. You know, looking back at our history, we had the Tōna Suppression Act. It stopped us being allowed to use all our natural methods of medicine. We need to understand there's some knowledge, there's some mātauranga, there's some holder, that when we bring them together, oh, the magic. We can help you help us, if you let us.
This is right. You know, I worked for a couple of years on a project that looked at health inequalities on Māori, and my job was to go around and just talk to Queen and Ōpōtiki that had been through the system and talk to their families. Yeah, it breaks your heart, eh? But how voiceless I think the government. Stepping back, the question was about the recommendations in the system report. for those of you that haven't had the chance to have a little look. In 2017, when we came in, one of our undertakings was to undertake a substantive review of the health and disability system, and the findings of that report came out earlier this year in June. It's a whole raft of things. It's well worth a read because they're but it's a really critical report that really dives into some of the challenges that we have in our healthcare system right now. So I strongly recommend at least read some of these. It's very important for us here in the Eastern Bay of Plenty to have to fight for resources all of the time from our rich mates over the corner over there in Tēna. We are the poorer cousin in the Eastern Bay of Plenty to our mates over there, so I just want to put that on the table. And when we start to look at our population base over here, we're a lot more diverse than our friends over the other side. So that brings it right back to your question. For me, there's a couple of things that really, for me, I look at. The trade relationship for me is it's really, I mean, there's a whole range of things, but at the end of the day, it's about power, and it's about the hapu that we, the whānau, being able to stand in your mana and engage as a partner with you, whomever you may be, other decision maker, other decision holder. So you stand there, you do that, I'm going to come in, and when we meet at that point to make determinations, that's through a shared power basis in that relationship. There's a couple of, I had some concerns about some of the findings specifically related to Māori health in that report. So, for me personally, the way that I look at any of the recommendations that I support, this is kind of a stock standard position for me, whether it be education, whether that be health, where or whatever, but things that impact our people. One, a beginner set up something that's standalone, are you resource adequately to do the job? Do you have the, are you empowered to make the determinations? Do you sit there at the end of the day with the finite decision-making abilities to make the determinations for the people that you need to represent? Or is it just another nice little work group off to the side that can put up recommendations? You got 2 or 3 or 4 other entities and somebody else at the end of the day can choose to make a decision about that issue. So those are some of the challenges that I have with the particular findings. I still wasn't suited that empowering a couple of Māori commissioners was the all end for myself. But I tend to look at these things probably a little more laterally. Take, for example, in the COVID healthcare response, Kiri Allan on Ōpōtiki, the Cape was one was the first place. Te whānau Apanui were the first iwi that went to automatically shut down their borders, and they did so through discussions, first of all, with their people. They then went to the council and said, hey, this is what we're going to do, because in 1918, half our folks got knocked out, and here's all the mass graves, so we are going to take control of our health, our well-being, and we're going to make those determinations for ourselves. Are you on board or not? Council said, choice, yep, you do that because it's important for your people. So then they call me, then I call my mate Wally Homer, who's the top dog down in Wellington. Everybody shuffled into the room, and that to me is more what a treaty-based relationship looks like. It's when the people make the determinations for their own health, well-being, whatever their aspirations are, and then they come to those that are also empowered to make decisions that we're going to do this. Are you on board? Our job is to swing in behind and do whatever we can. So that's the kind of relationship that I think embodies a real treaty-based relationship. This is my particular area of expertise before coming into Parliament. I don't like the treaty to be misconstrued to be something lesser than what I think it should be. It should be an absolute relationship based on mana to mana. So if that is what the proposal is, I would definitely look at supporting it, but I have to see that it didn't at all undermine our whānau, our iwi that needs to be leading the determinations.
The Public Health Association of New Zealand has come out strongly supporting the majority recommendation for Māori commissioning to Māori Health Authority. So all the Māori health leaders in New Zealand are absolutely 100% behind it.
This is just for Kiri Allan. I'm just wondering how you can come here and talk about how you care about people and care about the environment, and kind of nod along with saying, oh, you know, isn't it bad that people in the kiwi fruit industry are not paid enough? But when Labor had an opportunity to raise the minimum wage to a living wage, they chose not to, and they had the power to do something about that.
So I think the basis of your question is wrong, in my opinion. I think we're very committed to the living wage and there's the stages are all set out in terms of what is incrementally committed to. It's substantively more than what the previous government did, and the timeframes are set down in terms of how we're going to get there. I don't know if you can take my nodding along to a commitment to environmentalism or social justice as anything other than exactly what it is. That's what drives me. Unfortunately, not 61 people that have to make a determination at the end of the day. We worked in a coalition government to get to where we did. For us, I mean, Labour working rights are what underpin who we are as a party. It's our first and foremost commitment. Basically, there are 4 things that drive us, and they were summarised eloquently by Norman Kirk. All people need is somewhere to live, someone to love, something to hope for, and somewhere to live, somewhere to work, somewhere to hope for. What's the 4th one? No, other stuff I could hope. But basically, hope, love, jobs, house, 4. There you go.
Yeah, that's it.
And so I think, but a big part of that is that you've got to take people with you. I talked about at the start in my opening remarks that when you're transitioning from a status quo, you've got to take people and walk alongside people and transition. The big thing there, we had massive opposition from pretty much almost any person that paid wages, not everyone, massive opposition to the changes in living wage. We were at a debate last night, was it last night, 2 nights ago? I had half the room just scowl when I talked about how we had raised the minimum wage. You know, this is the thing with democracy, is that you've got to take the people with you. And if we don't take the people with us, if we don't transition and enable those transitions, the big issue was, okay, how many people will actually have to shut their doors? It's always a bit of a faux argument. That's a faux argument, is what I said. Hey, you can scowl at me all you want, I don't really care. But this is the issue. Well, New Zealand First, actually, I must say though, they were pretty committed to getting up to the living wage as well. This is something we were all committed to. It was a matter of time frames, and it was a matter of taking, small businesses with us. Those are the ones that are bearing the best front. I don't know why you're smirking at me, I really don't like it, but I'll let you smirk at me. I just find it uncomfortable because I'm giving you an honest answer, and that's something I said I would always do. I find that kind of politicking though that's not something I enjoy.
I guess, like, when you talk about bringing people along with you, you know,
you've got to take your small businesses with you. Those guys aren't rich, they're big dudes that have these big, massive, major trucks or whatever. They're small little family operators by and large. I'll give you an example of one of my best mates. She runs a liquor shop. She's not a wealthy person at all. And her big ethos for getting into business, well, one was a transition basically from the dog, but 2, they hired I think they had about, 6 or so staff. They paid them all as much as they could, and when we lifted up the wage, she had to let a girl go. And she was very angry at me about that because, we engaged in discussions about why that was so, and some people say, well, they should be managing their books better, and then, the business model was clearly unsustainable. Well, that's true. But also too, the next thing that I did was try and clad her with every kind of assistance under the sun that we were funneling into that region to try and enable her to work her business in a more sustainable way so she could pick up the person that she lost to be able to pay them. But I think that there's a dichotomy that can kind of often run, is that like all business is bad and that they just don't want to, that not everybody wants to treat workers well. Some businesses are bad. More often than not are the bigger ones that should be doing a lot better job, and we've heard about some of the examples right here in our own back doorstep here, in this industry here, and my mate's industry, and an industry that I love and I think sustains our community as well. But actually, most of our business here, the small businesses, my bro.
And they're small businesses that don't have big balances, and we need to wrap around, play around them and enable them to do what they do. It takes place.
Can I just ask you a question? One of the things I've noticed since being in governance roles, especially with regard to trusts, so we have the Tātou Trust, used to be Eastern Community Trust, and we have these wonderful people who put their names forward as citizens, residents of our region, to be on that trust. And as a sitting trustee, they get $40,000. And that's kind of gone up over years, etc. And one of the things we were looking at is there a social kind of equity base, because most of the people on these trusts are lawyers, doctors, and they have quite high standing in society and earn considerable incomes, just like a district councillor. Most of the smaller councils, people don't run for office because it's not a huge income based on the standard incomes of our nation. We've watched inequality become the huge issue of the now, and we see these huge billionaire types in our nation getting the best tax kind of, and under John Key, that's who he looked after, the billionaires. I mean, we have got a gentleman from America who owns, he's doing a great job, don't get me wrong, he owns one of our farming stations at the Kiri Allan next year. He just renovated his 4-bedroom house, $24 million renovation. And we could have just used that money to build 40, 50, 60 houses in my region, you know? So it's this inequality that's in existence because we've got these huge CEO kind of incomes. You know, I remember when I read about Volunteer getting $8 million. Like, what does someone do for that? I'm always like, wow. I know it's in the framework of business innovation, you know, the ministry of that. But these trust people, in my view, that's a community service using your knowledge, your expertise. I don't want it to be for free, I guess they've got to make time to meet. But those are some of the issues that we see now. More and more people jump from board to board to board. And in my region, I know someone that's been on 5 boards, so he collects over 100K in board fees. That's becoming people's lifestyle. And so I like to challenge those kind of things in respect to how this nation's egalitarian space is being managed, because it's becoming just residents that earn under $23,000 a year. You know, they have to decide whether they pay a power bill or buy food. It's not New Zealand. And those are the things that I believe like MEP governments can attend to better when you have more people at the table who understand those issues. Coming to the health board, I was surrounded at that table by people that never actually understood what it felt like in the healthcare system, because they all had their own insurance, went to private hospitals. So governance roles are really key to who serves and represents you at the tables of governance. And it's time for it to be a bottom-up and to be grassroots and to be everyday people, citizens who understand and get it. And I know that Kiri does because of her life, and she shared earlier, we need more parliamentarians that actually get the issues because they see them, they live them, they believe that they can be part of the change for them because they listen.
Each of you, what's one policy or outcome that you are proud of achieving within your respective organisation, party or government in your last term that you've been, like relating to climate change or environmental justice? I'm just going to put a time limit on responses.
Well, if there's one single thing, then for me it would be in the last term of Parliament, our council developed a set of climate change principles, which we put out for consultation with the public. Was really encouraged the response because it was quite ambitious. It's if you read it, it actually speaks about some quite fundamental issues around equity and you know, who is the most vulnerable to the impacts of climate change, and making sure that those people are that we probably recognise that and address those in our solutions. And quite, you know, reasonably radical in the kind of positioning it puts out. And I was really gratified that our community actually said, do more. We didn't know what response we would get. And there's a small number of people who kind of continue to say climate change is not an issue, but the vast majority of our population is saying, yep, do more. And then as a result out of that, this term we completed a set, out of those principles, we developed some strategies, some action plans and some targets, which are more ambitious than the national targets set under the Zero Carbon Law. And we've just put those out for consultation, which is just finished. And again, the response from the community has largely been, do more, go faster, take it more seriously. So we are actually taking some serious steps, and also the community is really on board with that, and I'm really proud of that.
I guess I want to say, firstly, from a district council perspective, the Tairāwhiti District Council has decided that it will go on an anti-racism I know I didn't mean to be the spokesperson for Māori when I became elected, but one of the things I found very strongly was that institutional racism that exists in governance decisions, and I've seen it played out. One of my district councillors said that when James Cook arrived, not enough Māori were killed. And when I took him to task for that, I got a code of conduct put against me because I made my council look bad. So I know.
But we do boycott his cafe.
And he didn't get re-elected. A James Cook statue was taken off a Mona that was put up there in 1969 in a jewel kind of by Centenary. It wasn't even James Cook as such, but things have changed. Turanganuiakiwa has been reinstated as the geographical name of my region, and no longer do I get embarrassed when I say I'm from Poverty Bay when I come to the Bay of Plenty. But from the Greens perspective, let me be clear, we feel really proud of the last 3 years. We've been able to do so much more than the last 30 years of government in respect to climate change action, carbon emissions, cycleways, all those things that we know are good for us and they're good for the planet. When COVID shut us down, the planet took a deep breath and went, please stay home for a little longer. But the Greens really focused in that time and space to actually say climate change action is action, let's do something. So getting our companies to get up with their EVs, in the space of cycleways, promoting carless days or using our cars less and shared driving, all those frameworks. But we're really proud of that because you're right, we have a council that has said no, climate change isn't that real, so I've seen that change in the 7 years I'm there. But we're also very proud of our young people. Our young people marched, they spoke up, and if we can get them actively involved in democracy, that's a win all the way.
Yeah, I think these last 3 years have been pretty epic, but I think that they're just a start. We got ETS over the line, that's good, but it's a start. I think that there's been a lot of collaboration working across our industries, which is good. It's just a start. I think that we need to have a really bigger focus on transitions between relatively unsustainable industries, which can be a bit of an economic backbone in regions like ours. So finding the right carrot and stick incentives, we've started, but there's a lot more to do. Something that I think was a really critical piece of work, and I'm looking forward to seeing it come to its full fruition, is the full stop plan on healthy waterways. The resources that have been set aside for healthy waterways is a project that has been absolutely blood, sweat and tears, led by the Honourable David Parker, who's got a bee in his bonnet and has done since he was a 15-year-old lad, about really cleaning up our waterways. He's getting taken to task by the agriculture sector right now. Really fascinating 20-minute interview of, I recommend listening to it, from last week, of a dude with Jaden Mackay on the country just taking David to task and David just rearing back. But there has been, and for us, something that happened straight off the bat when we got into government. Straight away, just the ban on the offshore exploration permits. That was epic. It was, and again, I keep putting it, it's like at the start, actually using Taranaki as a bit of a blueprint in terms of how you can transition from one very unsustainable industry to another. I think there's going to be a lot of lessons that we can take from that, and about how we can roll that over here. For us specifically here on the East Coast, something that just happened, has been signed off in the last month or so, is the Rau Kumara package. So between Te Whānau Apururi, Ngāti Porou and the Crown, about 40 mil has been set aside. That's about 112,000 hectares that has been absolutely decimated by deers, possums, and the like.
That's not your achievement, that's a green project that you're talking about.
My friend, tell you something. One, many of us from this region, that's not a green project, that's an iwi project. It is a massively fought for project by the people of Te Whānau Apanui and Ngāti Porou. The people that went in to fight for that project, I was one of them. I chewed Eugenie Sake's ear off, and she was very, very, very open to listening to the people from up that way. When we work together, my bro, we're going to achieve a lot more. When I see a young man like yourself sit here and want to attack and attack and attack somebody like me because I don't wear your colours, all I can see is that we are destined to fail. If you and I can sit here in a room, we can find a common base and a common ground to build upon, that's when we're going to create the epic and the awesome. Was that a green project? No, my bro, that was led by the people, for the people of that land. But that's something that I'm incredibly proud of because they led it. They've been in planning for years and years and years, and they got that funding over the line. Now that is a massive conservation estate that has been absolutely left to its own devices, really. It's had about 250k set aside for pest control every year, and basically when you go into the heart of the Rokumura range, you can't hear a bird. So the people from that place are working with themselves and DOC to create a sustainable pest management and long kind of sustainable kind of future for what they want to be doing there. That's creating jobs for whānau, that's putting them at the centre of it. So at a very local level, that's something I'm incredibly proud to support.
Do you think our present parliamentary system can accommodate that? Or do we have to look at something like a two-house system to fully support the Treaty of Waitangi? It's sort of like constitutional matters.
Yeah, I'm just going to shoot right in there. I'm a big advocate for constitutional change. It's kind of why I got into Parliament. I think that the system that we have is a replica, it's a holdover from the Westminster system. We've carried over, imported it, we've made the subsequent amendments over the years. I'd like to see us dictate our own constitutional arrangements, what works for us here, and I can see that happening. So the friends in the room, I can see that really being a catalyst sort of conversation that will really start to kick off once the current head of state passes. I don't see us really being able to gravitate into a really full-swung conversation on constitutional reformation that is by our people, for our people here, until we've sort of shaken off some of the ties to the mother state back over in England. But you know what, we're 100, how many years old? 80-odd-ish years old now. Yeah, well, this nation state called New Zealand is 180 years old now, and the fact that we still have not cut the ties, cut them pretty much all but in name, but in terms of what values drive us, I don't think so. I mean, look, I'm a student of Sir Geoffrey Palmer. I worked in his law firm for many years, and I think that he started a really catalytic conversation about constitutional reformation that I'm a big subscriber to. It goes so far, but it can go a lot further, and Moana Jackson and others led another.
Sort of Martiki Mike.
Yeah, Martiki Mike. I think if there's some really good whakaaro on there, but I think that's a conversation that I don't think that we've had collectively as a nation yet because we haven't been ready to, but I think that we need to. And I think in my lifetime that is something that I really pray that we will genuinely get to a point where we have fundamental radical constitutional reform so that we can be a country that really dictates who we are, what our values are, and not a hangover from another place. But whether we'll see that in my lifetime, I don't know.
You know what? I think my theme song has been Sam Cooke, Change Don't Come. Because change has to, fundamentally. And if you think about changes, this electorate has 5 wahine toa, like the Ikaro Rāwhiti, East Coast electorate has Māori women standing. That's a change that has come. I believe that it's time to push more for that because after the mosque shooting, we went into this little notion of who are we?
Yes.
Because we knew that wasn't us.
Yes.
It's not who New Zealand is, right? And so I think that conversation and more courageous conversations to come should happen now. What I used to get mad about when people would say to me, Meredith, when you run for office, you won't get in first because you're Māori and you're a woman, and of course I was elected, was that you have to wait for those people to die. It's not fair that I have to wait for people to die before change gonna come. It's time for those people who won't get out of the way. Change gonna come whether you like it or not. And it's been a change in dynamic since my anō. Look at the seasons. Spring doesn't go, oh, I better not show up now. It's like, it's fundamental in life that change happens. We are all here, we've gone through changes. And so the changes that need to happen is about that leadership that Nandor spoke of. We need to be bolder and more brave, and we need to speak our truth. Who are we as New Zealand? We are change makers. We make our direction stronger by standing up and speaking, by voting. We need to change the age of the vote to 16 because they can drive a car, they can do a whole bunch of stuff. So I think it's time for a whole lot of change, but as New Zealanders, conservatives, get more kind of fearful, it's about how we bring them with us to say this is our New Zealand and it's time for the new to be.
In the last election, there was one of the 5 voters didn't turn up. Okay, so what is that saying? Is it saying that they don't have any hope? They don't feel like they belong, or this was 2017.
Yeah, but in 2010 I did a voter participation project. A good friend of mine got funding, and I knocked on doors of non-voters, and I had really interesting responses. I can't read.
Yeah.
So reading is an issue literacy.
Yeah.
It's a basic principle. We all think everyone just be able to read a name.
Yeah.
I don't know any of those people.
Yes.
Why did I vote for them? I don't know them. So that's about being seen in your community. You're a lecturer. This is a large electorate to be seen in. Get to know all the people in it. So I think there's a lot of need to change our electoral, the way we do things. Obviously the STV speak and Māori Ward, all these conversations are happening. But to the non-voter, we've got to look at their narrative. There's been a lot of reasons why we've got a lot of non-voters. It's been because they've never felt...
I'm not smart enough. They come through all the time. I'm not smart enough to do that.
I can't do that.
Yeah, so there's heaps of that. People don't feel like they are a participant, but they're a recipient of decisions, and that's what Meredith spoke about.
So that leadership.
Totally. Yeah, well, when she was talking about the project she lived in Kaiti, about, and people go, can we actually do this?
Yeah.
Most people don't know that we are actively, my vote is as equal as John Key's. But there's just a real lack of knowledge, fundamental basic knowledge about what the system is. And
what is this system that they're supposed to know about? I campaigned to be the mayor of Kairawhiti last term, and the reason I did that was because of participatory democracy. The low turnout in local elections is huge in my region, and it was what I learned the most when I travelled through it was people said, what does council actually do? So there's still a huge populace that don't get involved because they don't know why they should, how they should, and who they should. It's just it's simple.
That's right.
Civics in schools will help, but conversations like this.
Exactly. Yes.
Sorry, Lee.
No, thank you, it's great. Can I just add something to the question about constitutional change? Because it's something that I'm also extremely interested in, and I haven't thought a great deal about a second, I've thought about a second chamber. I'm not sure I see enormous benefits from that. What I do think for me is there's a fundamental lie at the heart of our constitution, which is that the Crown is the font of sovereignty and justice. And that power resides with the Crown and flows down to the people. And it's a lie.
Yes.
It's an absolute lie. And I'm a Republican because of that, more than anything. Until we remove that lie, we cannot build a constitution that locates sovereignty in the people.
We don't have a constitution.
Well, we have constitutional arrangements, but they're based on this English notion of sovereignty. And to me, constitutional reform has to recognise an inherent jurisdiction for local decision making. Fundamentally, more than we can change the Queen and put in an elected president, and it makes no difference if we don't change that fundamental recognition.
You've shown us in Whakapāne that you can save all of this money through energy conservation and doing things differently. Have you shown your data to the government to get it across the country?
Well, it got heard somehow. Kitty's been tried in my room, which is amazing.
Yeah.
So people are listening. Gareth Hughes was here 3 years ago talking in the community, and we spoke together. And so it's been approached many times. I just had an email yesterday from Jonathan Flockton in the Ministry of Ed, and he had breakfast with Ika yesterday to discuss a 230-page report I wrote during COVID that they commissioned me to write. So just as of yesterday, Ika said they're interested in working with me to look at a model to roll out in New Zealand.
Awesome.
So it's going to happen.